Audrey Nelson.
Shelby Lindbrod.
Steve Okins.
Brian Grummitz.
Rob Bumgarn.
Marv.
Jared Bogey.
So,
Kelsey Waltz. Is Rachel on yet?
okay, why don't we call the meeting to order? Jared, are you ready once we get there shortly?
Absolutely, I can be.
Okay. Can I get a motion to approve the minutes from March 4th, 2020?
So moved.
What?
Yeah, so moved.
Okay. Okay, that motion's approved. The minutes, and I will ask for, is there any additions or deletions to the schedule that we have in front of us?
This Brian.
Okay.
Excuse me, just for point of information, that we probably should announce who we are if we're going to make the motion, and announce who we are when you second, so our minute taker can follow.
Okay, good point.
Swatsky makes a motion to accept the minutes.
Dennis will second.
Discussion? Okay, that motion is approved on the minutes.
Should we vote on that?
Yeah, should we
All in favor? All in favor, say aye.
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 Opposed? And that motion is passing the minutes. Next up on the agenda, item number 3. Robbins Island presentation. I've got Rachel and James. And Jared, are you involved? Is this the same presentation, Jared?
It is.
Okay, so do you want to take the lead? Is that the plan?
Rachel or James was going to.
I'm right here.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay, Rachel.
Okay, I'll do a little intro. Hi, everybody. Sorry, I clicked on the Jared's email from today, and it wasn't look like anyone was logged on, so I found another email. So, as everyone knows, I'm the chair of the Robbins Island Subcommittee, along with Vice Chair James Miller, and then Jared here with Bolton and Mink. I just wanted to say, first off, thank you so much for allowing these meetings to continue through this time and with video conferencing, so we don't get behind with the project. A little refresher for you, our committee has met on and off for about a year. Our work was to tweak the plans that really were started from the Robbins Island Mayor's Task Force Committee, which really came up with a master plan for the island. And now with the $3 million allocated for this project, our expertise with our committee was to tweak and really tune those details for parking lots, road, and hopefully enough left over for some shelters. Bolton and Mink has done a great job, I just want to say, on taking our feedback and any of our suggestions over the last year and really listening to us and putting it back into the design each time we meet. So a special thanks to Jared and Kelsey. And then from there, we've also been speaking, of course, with the public works staff in the city to make sure in the long run, this will be something that they can continue to maintain effectively and efficiently and with not any extra cost. So from there, I'll just hand it now over to Jared to present this design to you, and hopefully we can save any questions for at the end of his presentation, because I know how hard it is with a video conference and everyone chiming in. It's kind of hard to hear or understand. So if you have a question, I just ask that you kind of write it down and then we'll try to answer it the best we can when he's done presenting. So Jared, take it away.
All right, well, good afternoon, everybody, and thanks for the intro, Rachel. Really, ultimately, in your packets this evening or afternoon, were a memo outlining the cost. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. If anybody can't see it, please speak up, but I'll do that here right now. So basically, as Rachel mentioned, the primary goal as we started this project was to take care of the parking, roadway and water main improvements. As we've arrived at the final plans for this process, we've identified an estimated construction cost associated with that, which is the primary goal of the project. Subsequent conversations with the committee indicated the need and the desire of the community for some shelters. So we've identified the shelters as alternates. And ultimately what that means is the main components, the roadways, the parking lot, and the water main improvement will be included in a base bid. And that bid will serve as the basis of how the project is awarded. The alternates, being the shelters, may or may not be awarded depending on where the bids come in and the overall project budget for the project. So I just wanted to make that clear to everybody, what that ultimately really means. So with that, I'll dive into...
I'm sorry, never mind. You switched pages. I was just wondering if you could make it a little bit bigger.
Okay,
it's hard
sure.
To, sorry.
So this is basically an overall view of the improvements as they're contemplated. The areas in green are proposed improvements. The areas in pink or the salmon color are the areas that are going to be removed. And then all the yellow items are items that are staying in place. And this trail, of course, stays in place that goes around the island, but just to give everybody a sense of what's being improved and what's being removed. So ultimately, and I can zoom in here a little bit to make it a little more clear, we have a variety of parking areas that are incorporated into the project. We have the southwest boat launch, which will provide better flow for vehicles to land their boat and park as they leave. Also, one of the discussions that came up during the committee was relative to some of the parking stalls on here. And as a result, a trail connection was constructed between the parking area and the boat launch, knowing that people will utilize these stalls and perhaps get on a friend's boat or a family member's boat. So moving east and northeast, if you will, I'll jump over to the southeast or the other boat launch. Here you can see we've identified 5 trailer stalls and then 12 parking stalls. Originally, this parking lot was much larger. Through collaboration with the committee, they did not see a need for as large of a parking lot, so that's been reduced in size. This is the primary access road moving into the site. The roadway itself will have curb and gutter up until this point, and then there will be curb along this portion of this parking lot. Those are the only surfaces within the proposed improvements that have curb and gutter. And ultimately, the reason curb and gutter was not included is because curb and gutter adds cost to the project and also serves a maintenance need. So it's balancing the maintenance versus cost. And I think the committee has done a really good job of coming up with a good solid foundation for this plan. The other item I will call your attention to is this is the approximate running line of the water main. It'll connect to the existing water main that exists currently over here. And then the other water main that is generally in this location. As you may or may not be aware, the water main south of the Four Seasons shelter running out to the highway is in need of, it's been a maintenance issue, and this line here will take care of that concern. Moving northwest, this is basically the access to the back end of the island here, and provides an opportunity for a turnaround. There are parking stalls there. These parking stalls are generally in the same location as the ones that exist. I will draw your attention to this trail. This is a new trail that's being proposed to connect to the existing trail system that goes around the destination playground. So that's basically a large overview. As part of the project, there will be trees throughout the area that will need to be removed. However, that's to accommodate the new roadway and the new trails. We have had discussions with city staff, and every year, you may or may not be aware, every year the city plants a number of trees throughout the community, and the trees that are going to be removed from the park as a result of the construction will be implemented into their tree replacement plan over the upcoming years. And I think with that, I will pause and see if answer any questions that anybody might have.
Anybody have any questions for Jared? And also just a reminder, if you can mute your mic when you're not speaking, just for the background noise. The one question I have, I guess I'll start with a question. That over by the fishing, the one over to the east, that smaller parking lot for boat launch there, is that a new access? Yeah, you're on the right spot to get on and off the road, the main road, so you can now get in and out there. Is that new?
No, it's not, Matt. It's just gravel right now.
I guess so. Right now, I can't pull in right there. Can I?
Yes,
I've been by.
You can, but it's just the parking lot is gravel. They did that.
So I've been by there 5 million times in my life. Can I drive in there right now?
Yes, it's gravel.
I'm talking about from the Highway 71 though.
Yes, it's gravel. It's Robbins. They created that to help out with the flow of traffic for Rock and Robbins. And someone else
Okay, I
correct
got
me if I'm wrong, but it's there, but it's just gravel to access it. But they only, I believe, maybe open it up or close it off for that event.
Okay, that's all I have for questions. Anybody else?
Dennis, I have a question, Jared. If we go to the alternates, can you explain a little bit about what those shelters might be?
Yeah, absolutely. So the alternates, the first alternate, and if I could find my mouse here again. The shelter that was identified as the first priority would be this one. What's contemplated for that is a 20 by 40 shelter with a approximately 16-foot overhang, and that what the overhang would do would allow for picnic tables to be placed outside of the three-season shelter, if you will, underneath that overhang. The second one, and we are not talking about restrooms or anything like that in the shelters. It's a three-season shelter with an overhang for this one. The second one is in this location, and that is a 20 by 40 shelter also. One thing to note, we have worked with RAM Construction to get some details associated with the existing Four Seasons shelter. The concept here is that these shelters would maintain a similar characteristic of the Four Season, although the Four Seasons is more of your primary focal point shelter. So these shelters wouldn't be quite as ornate. However, they would match, for example, roof colors, generally, the siding colors, using that same palette of colors, and then the interior construction with the Four Season was a FRP material, which is great for maintenance, easy to clean, and that would be the similar interior finish of these two shelters as well. So that's a broad overview.
Jared, this is Bob Poe. Jared, this is Bob Poe. I'm wondering about the existing shelters that are already out there. Most of them are kind of open-sided. There is one up there on the hill, I think, where you've got marked as the alternate number 2. Are those buildings coming out, or are they remaining?
This building would definitely come out. There was some discussion potentially about relocating, I believe, this shelter. And Rob, you might have to jump in and correct me if I'm wrong here, but ultimately these would replace the existing shelters in those locations.
You're correct. There's another shelter that would be removed. It would be Lion Shelter. That's the one that would kind of be on the parking lot. It's more considered an open shelter. I don't know if you can show it, Jared. It's kind of, if you go from the Four Season over and you go to the east, that's where a little bit more.
Oops.
It's kind of by where the 110 stall is at. It's over in that area is where the Lion Shelter. You can almost see it, the dark spot on it. If you keep going to your right and down a little bit, that's where that shelter would be. That shelter would be gone completely.
That's the shelter, just a reminder, that usually gets flooded with water, correct, Rob?
Correct.
So it's doing probably more harm than good because it's always underwater. Any other questions for myself, James, or Jared? Or if James wants, is he here at the meeting right now too, if he wants to chime in at all with how this design also works for Celebrate the Lights and how we've been working with him on it?
I have a question. This is John Conold.
Okay.
So does this trail where you have the yellow and then the trail that you don't have highlighted, Jared, does that continue to go all the way around the island?
That's correct. This trail that you're referring to?
Yep.
Yes, that remains in place. Yep.
Okay.
It's basically taking the road and turning it into a trail, except we need part of that road where you see on the west side where it's green, that we can't have it be a road and a walkway. So that's why we had to build an extension right there to connect it.
So would you still, for the Christmas lighting, would you still drive on this path then still?
That is correct. It will be, it's a road, and that's what's saving us thousands of dollars, is that we're just taking this road and we're just going to be turning it into a walking, biking, running path. And then the public works staff has been working with us to form some type of structure to put, kind of like a permanent structure which can be removable, so to make sure that cars do not drive on it, but take it and move it, or kind of like open it as a metal gate or something for Celebrate the Lights. So that's the only time that cars can drive on that, is for an event like that.
Mary Swatsky has a question or two.
Audrey
Sure.
Nelson has a question or two.
Okay, Mary?
Okay, Mary, go ahead.
I just I just am curious about, and I just want background information, the curb and gutter. When you talk about that being maintained up until that point, what does that mean then beyond maintenance? Just curious.
Yeah, so the curb and gutter, as you mentioned, goes into this location. From there, it's simply a bituminous or blacktop surface. So there won't be concrete on either side of it from this point west.
Okay, so, I mean, it would still get, okay.
Yeah, it'll still be maintained. Maybe
Yeah,
if I,
easy for snow removal.
yes. So ultimately, and this gets into I guess what I referred to when I said maintenance perspective, when you have concrete curb and gutter, it helps maintain the edges so that people don't drive off of the edge of a bituminous. And that's sometimes in the spring, you might get that's where you see some rutting sometimes. That keeps the people on the road better, the curb and gutter, but it's also costly. So I think to channelize people, ultimately where the greatest use is going to be with that curb and gutter, that was the compromise that I referred.
Yep, that makes 100% sense. And also, I would assume the impromptu, let's make a quick parking lot type of, I want to just park, where now you're going to have the curb and gutter, you can't park there. So I get that. That's my second question is, I guess I could have done my homework and added it up, but from what we used to have for parking to what we will have for parking, is it a wash? And period. We'll answer that first.
Actually,
No, go ahead, Jared.
actually, it's an increase in parking.
Okay, and then so if we maintain, I would assume Rockin' Robins out there, can you just put your pointer on that? Okay. And we all know that there's off, grass parking during that time too. Will that still be acceptable? Or don't we need the grass parking anymore?
I don't know that I can speak to that specifically. However, there would be nothing prohibiting it if it was needed to go there. I mean, so I guess what I'm saying is these improvements wouldn't impact anything going on in this area.
And I'm just being really hopeful. But let's just say we come into a windfall or 100 years down the road. I mean, could there be other improvements for that area for Rockin' Robins?
As to what, Mary, with what improvements, like adding on more parking lot space? Because it's going to be grass all the way to the right and then grass all the way to the south where it says exist, or the pink was. That If you want to take green space away and add more parking lots, that's totally up to the city of Willmar to decide.
Yep. Nope. I don't want to cloud any information. So just was wondering. There'll be grass. We'll still have the stage there and that kind of thing.
Yep. There, what is coral or salmon right there will now be grassy area.
Yep.
Audrey.
Yeah, thank you. My question was also about the curb and gutter. I remember Sean Christensen making a comment about needing to have a curb and gutter, and I understand the costs and also just even being walkable or those types of things, but what has been done to the levels out there that will prevent off-roading, or, was it strictly a decision because of cost, or are there some other precautions that have been put in place for that area that doesn't have curb and gutter?
Well, we can let Rob maybe with the Public Works chime in here, but my understanding from it was not so much cost, but as a maintenance for the Public Works staff, because it initially goes back to if we do put curb and gutter on that one big parking lot on the northeast side, you won't be able to drive onto the grass so easily as if we were to do any type of big event out there. But I think it had to deal with, they would probably end up with their snow machines ruining the curb and gutter if for maintenance wise. But I'll let Rob chime in to kind of further.
Are you speaking to the road or are you speaking to the parking lot? I was talking about the road.
Oh, we're talking about having, I thought you wanted the whole road and parking lots curb and gutter.
No,
Why weren't
I'm
you doing
talking
it?
about the road that goes up to the, that had been expressed as a concern, if I remember right, when we had looked at it before, because of the drainage and, all of that. And because there's going to be two-way traffic there with making sure that cars are on the road and that type of thing. So I just was
Oh,
curious.
that road.
That road, yes.
Okay. That does the loop?
Yes.
Okay. I think it has to deal with the maintenance thing. I'll let Rob talk.
Yeah, Rachel and Audrey, that's correct. It's when Kurt was at these meetings, he was describing it would be kind of a nightmare with the curb there because they would be taking chunks out of it and we'd be replacing it a lot if we had the curb and gutter there. So I feel strongly that it's about a maintenance issue.
So has the elevation been addressed, Rob, in that area?
Jared, can you help me out on that
Sure,
one?
sure. Elevation from which
Well, the road currently is almost underwater. So I guess I would hate to see us do a new road that still has, that if we aren't doing anything about the drainage there.
Right. So this road along here has been raised a little bit. There's still going to be that slope that comes from the top of the hill down. The trail is actually elevated up above the road a little bit just so that we can get everything to match in and meet all the ADA requirements that are required of us. So everything will drain from essentially the northeast to the southwest, generally in this direction.
So in particular, between the shelter and the playground, that section of road. From the
Where
park,
it's yellow?
shelter, from the
The
parking
green or the
lot,
yellow? The green. The green.
The green
Yeah.
between the, right there where you're at right now, down to the playground.
This area.
Yes.
Yeah, that's also been raised a little bit, but see, we still have to make sure that we tie into the existing elevations of the four season. We don't want to be above the four season. Yep.
So there is standing water there after every rain. And so that's a concern that I have, that we've addressed that somehow.
Yes. Yep.
Any other questions?
Well, I guess, so looking at the budget, right now you can go ahead with this as is, including the shelters, depending on the estimates. I get that, or the bids coming in. Would you consider, I just want to have this on record, would you consider, if you can't do both, to do one? Or is it all or none?
One shelter, are you saying, or?
Yes.
Well, then I'm not sure. That have to be between Rob and Jared. Maybe if you want it, instead of having it the base bid and then two separate alternates, which is I think what they have. It says alternate number 1 and alternate number 2. So essentially, you could say it's like 3 bids going out.
Yeah, that's right. That's correct, Rachel. So basically, the city would have the option of awarding the water main, parking, and road improvements, and that being the project in its entirety, the city could award that portion of the project plus one alternate, or the base bid or the parking and roadway and water main plus both alternates, depending on how the bids come in. And that's ultimately the reason these were set up as alternates because as we're all aware, there's a lot of volatility in the markets right now, and we're not sure exactly where those are going to come in. But it provides flexibility for the city, specifically as it relates to how the funding for the projects begins to flow from the sales tax dollars.
Audrey Nelson, I have a question.
Go ahead, Audrey.
It's always been my understanding that we chose this project this year because we intended to pay cash from the local option sales tax. And so my concern is I was surprised to see the shelters added on because I'm not sure there's even enough cash right now to do the parking lot. So I'm just curious with the thought process or how you guys came together to come up with the 3 million. Because at the last meeting, before we met with the architects, we had a discussion about that these bids were at 2 million because there had been a comment made about that there would be $1 million left that could be spent. And, I guess I was thinking that the shelters would be in a different time frame. But I guess I'm really concerned right now about even the cash available to do the roads.
I guess that's a question for the executive committee of local option sales tax because instead of our Robbins Island committee.
Yeah, I think I would agree that I think that probably is either the Invest in Willmar or the city council. I think that's maybe more of a question. Marv, you have a comment?
Yeah, I do. Thanks, Matt. I'm taking and looking at the project that has been placed together in front of us, and I want to really commend both the professional services that have been hired to do this work, but also the committee. They certainly took into account the information that was gleaned from the master park plan, but also the mayor's task force. And I think they have an excellent solution to our Robbins Island, which is our GEM facility for our parks within our community. And I just want to give a shout out to those staff members, the professional staff that has been hired to help with that, but also to Rachel and James for the work that they've done on putting this together. So I really like what I'm seeing. I really think that you have captured what our community is asking for. And this is a phenomenal first step on the local option sales tax. So thank you so much for your work.
Thank you, Marv.
Nice work, guys. I have a question that I think is kind of tied into Audrey's maybe a little bit. And maybe mine's a little bit more simpler for me to understand. If Jared, you mentioned like, how does it work just so for informational purposes for us? You mentioned like, depending on the markets and the bids and the supply and demand and all the economics. So, I mean, the bids could come in higher, but they could come in lower. Obviously, they could go both ways. Is that kind of what you were saying earlier? And I don't know that answers Audrey's question, but is that kind of part of the deal? Is this kind of a general estimate, depending on, could be less, could be more? Is that how I understand it?
Yeah, you're absolutely correct. The estimates that you saw in the memo this afternoon are based on the best and most recent information that we have available. And what I can say is that bids have been coming in. Some have been coming in high, some have been coming in low, and really, you really don't know what you're going to get until you put it on the street. And ultimately, once the project is advertised, at that point, once the bids are received, whether it be Invest in Willmar or the city council, ultimately at that point, that's when the decision, what improvements are included, whether that be an alternate, both alternates, or no alternates, that's the point when that decision is made. Because once a contract is awarded, then the city is obligated to move forward with that. So yes, to answer your question, they could be higher, they could be lower. But it definitely provides a lot of flexibility for the city to evaluate the budget before they award a project.
Mary Swatsky has 2 more questions. So the entrance off of Highway 71, yep. Is that the same width or is it wider under this plan to get into the park?
Yeah, so the the access, and I'll try to zoom in here. Ooh, bear with me a minute. I apologize for that. So the access width, I think, is a foot or 2 wider than the existing. This roadway here is proposed as 30 feet wide. So that's going to allow 2-way traffic. People are not going to be able to park on that entrance road, but as you can see, the curves that we've identified here, that'll help with people trying to cut the corners. So not a lot changes with the existing access other than it a foot or 2 wider. And then this roadway with the curb and gutter on will be 30 feet up to this point here.
You know,
Okay.
Jared, I just thought of this now. Sorry, Mary, I know you have another question, but could we, I'm not sure what the cost would be, to have like a right turning lane to kind of help get the traffic to go out the way, or is that just for only Rockin' Robbins events where it gets really busy like that, instead of people who are trying to go straight?
The short answer is there's that potential. The fact of the matter is that will not do anything for the overall project budget. That can get relatively expensive. And as you alluded to, it's for isolated events, although important, isolated. The use of it throughout the year may not justify that, but it's certainly a potential, and it is also something that could be added at a later date.
Okay, thank you.
So then an extension to that question is, because I remember door knocking on this issue and talking about, you know, the safety of coming in and out. And I know this is going to cost, you know, the cost is prohibitive probably, but is there any thought that you could have an in over to the, you know, or an out, one way in and one way out, given you have that other parking lot off to the, what would you say, that north, whatever direction that is? Yeah. And I know that's opening another big a can of worms, but I just want that to be considered or to be thought about, because I do know that that's, you know, you have a lot of police officers and people controlling traffic for events only, big events like that. I get that. So it's only maybe 6 times a year, but it is 6 times a year.
I think, Mary, for those big events, they have one way in and one way out, but for general everyday purpose, it's just that main road, especially since the Rotary Club spent a lot of money on that wonderful entrance sign right when you come in, and you can kind of see it shaded in. And yes, thank you, Jared. Right there is Mao's hand. The sign is right there as the main entrance to get into the park. But when they have Rockin' Robbins, they certainly have a way to come in through the main way to park on the grass, and I think they have them coming out through that southeast boat launch.
Okay. My other, just an awareness statement is, as I'm looking at the flyer that we brought door to door to folks, just a reminder that the Robbins Island Regional Park was $3 million, and it included shelters, roads, and parking lots. So, and I commend you guys. You did a great job. This is a nice plan, and thank you for your work. I just hope, and I realize that we're in different times financially in our city with with the sales tax. I get all that, and I appreciate having the shelters being the alternates because we do need to get the foundation done. I understand all of that. I hope we don't forget that we do have the alternate shelter houses as well.
Okay, thank you, Mary. This is Matt. My thought would be, obviously the council and Mr. Elkins and the staff are going to determine at some point, down the road here, as far as when they potentially want to move forward on, directing us as far as funding and all that, just with what's going on. But for right now, I'd be interested in hearing if we could get a motion to approve this design. It sounds like it fits. You guys have done a lot of work to get to this level. And I would say that the design phases, I think, hopefully we can approve and move forward on. Is anybody interested in taking a step forward here and approving the design?
This is Dennis. I have a comment.
Go ahead, Dennis.
Comment. Yeah. I just want to remind the committee that we did establish some guidelines as to what we were going to follow when we approved this. We spent a lot of time talking about that. And as I look at it, I think most of them are followed, but just remember, we did establish that. And I think that they've all been resolved. The only question I have on that is review the city staff approval. One of the things that was supposed to be done, and maybe it has been, was to have a meeting with this group and city staff so that everyone was on the same page. And my question is, was that done? Or maybe that's been done all along. I don't know.
As far as the steps in the process, Dennis, is that what you're referring to?
Yes, I am.
I can speak, Matt, for Robbins Island, who's been involved. Fernando has been our council rep.
We established.
Rob attend all our meetings, and we've had Kurt Hine with the city as well.
Audrey Nelson, question.
Audrey, go ahead.
I really like the design, but when even some of the questions that I was asking,
I'm specifically talking about engineering.
That was my question. I don't believe this has gone before Public Works. As far as, does it need to? I think that's the question that Dennis is asking, to be reviewed for design and engineering.
Well, I was told by Rob that it goes to you guys first with this chain of command. Don't we have a 10 to 15 tier that we have to meet? So after we present it to you, then we present it to Parks and Rec Board, and we present it to Public Works next week.
Then to the city council.
And to city council, yes. The last, is the city council, but it's you guys. If you guys want to change the tier that we present to Public Works, if we're the first committee to do this, Public Works before yourselves, but we're just following Rob's advice and where we're supposed to be on the chain of command on where we present.
Yeah, this is Matt. It comes to us, Park and Rec, Public Works, City Council. That's the process.
We are ready to go with all those committees after this committee. So we're following the rules. We're following the chain of command as far as I know.
Just a question. I thought Park and Rec was, well, maybe not. I don't honestly remember. I thought it did that before. Not sure it matters at this point in time, but
Matt, this is Marv.
Okay, yeah, Marv, I'm going to let you speak, but please, if you are not speaking, please put your phone on mute, please.
This
Okay,
is
thank you.
Dennis, and I agree with Matt on the process.
This is Matt. Is anybody else having a hard time hearing Dennis?
Yeah, Matt, what I was going to say is it sounds to me like he's got his computer on and his phone on, and he's getting a lot of feedback. So either it's that he's not close enough to the mic or he's got two devices turned on. It's one or the other. In my experience and having been in other of these, that's what I was going to mention.
Matt, it's Rob. I think Dennis was asking about engineering about this. Sean has attended a lot of
This is
these.
Dennis, my phone is off.
So Sean Christensen has been at these meetings and has all the plans, and Jared and I and Sean all met about this as well. So engineering is aware of the plans.
Okay, Dennis, can you speak? You were breaking up. I'm not sure. I couldn't hear everything. Can you speak again and recap?
Yeah, I was starting out saying, we have a policy that we put in place, how we were going to conduct the approval meetings and what was to be presented. If everybody remembers that, we approved that like a year ago. And as I was looking down the list, my question was city staff approval, and that had to do with engineering. And I think that Rob answered that question for me.
Okay, thank you, Dennis.
Audrey, can I ask one more question?
Audrey, go ahead.
I am very much in favor of the road. I am questioning the shelters and just the priorities of the shelters and even the size of the shelters in the different locations. So is this a blanket approval that we approve of the shelters in addition to the road, or is it, are they all in one, or are they separate?
Well, I guess my understanding would be, I mean, if the committee has spent a lot of time and had several meetings and this is what they want, I guess my feeling is if we want to get into the details of the plan, then the people that want to get into those details need to go to those subcommittee meetings, because unless somebody sees a major concern here, now we're just asking them to go back unless you have a specific question. My feeling is, yeah, I think that once these are approved, or maybe Park and Rec, they can tweak a few things, but I think that the general overall plan is my understanding that this really looks good. I don't think that doesn't mean they could tweak a few things. And in fact, when the bids come in, Audrey, we're not even going to know if we have enough money for any shelters. So I'm not sure I'm answering your question, but I guess I'm comfortable with the work that I've seen here. If other people are, I'd like to get a motion. If other people are not, then we don't have to motion to move it to Park and Rec. Those are my comments.
Swatsky would like to make a comment to that.
Yep, go ahead, Mary.
I guess I appreciate that question. Just we are the front line to answer questions. So I will back up Audrey. Just tell me why. I like the location of the 2 shelter houses, but why did you come to that conclusion?
Rob, why don't you chime in based on your information that you and Kurt gave us as a committee?
All right. Yeah, we picked these shelters. One. Let's just start with Hilltop Shelter. That's the alternate number 2. That's where the parking lot is at. A lot of the Christmas light display is puts there. There's power to those places already. So if we had to move those shelters, we'd have to relocate the power. And it's very similar to open shelter number 1. That's on the south side of the island there. There's power to that shelter. We put the parking lot right next to it. It's next to the bike trails. We just felt like these are good locations to have it. It's far enough away from other people, so if there's parties or reunions, people still have some privacy as long with them.
Makes sense. So that's great. Thank you.
And as far as the size, I think that's what also Kurt and Rob are giving us feedback on what they feel is the best size for those 2 shelters to not take away from people. Why make them even bigger? Because we don't want to replicate Four Seasons shelter space that's already there. These are supposed to be more intimate, smaller gathering shelters. So I'll just say the large facility at this place would be the Four Seasons shelter. Then the next would be the one next to that south parking lot. It's kind of like a medium, and then a smaller one would be that Hilltop. If that's kind of a way to put it, a small, medium, large, to accommodate whatever needs you might have to rent a shelter.
So as a follow-up question to that, like for instance, how many picnic tables would go into the alternate shelter number 1 versus how many picnic tables, if that's what you're thinking about putting in there, in number 2?
Open shelter number 1 with the overhang, that would be able to accommodate about 6 to 8 picnic tables in the overhang, and each shelter probably itself would host 8 picnic tables. That's typically what we have in our shelters right now, is 6 to 8 picnic tables, but they do get moved out quite often. If depending on the weather, people just will grab the shelters and move them out into the green space around the shelter, either to get the breeze or just to enjoy the weather.
And so then the main bathroom would be the Four Seasons shelter.
The main bathroom, yes, there is another bathroom facility up on top where it says kind of playground. There's a bathroom facility up there. Yep, right in that area, Jared. There's another bathroom facility there.
With water? I mean,
yeah.
Really? Okay.
Yep.
Just out of curiosity, what kind of condition is that in?
It's not bad. Anything, it could always have a little TLC, some paint and that, but that can all be done through Public Works.
Yep.
Audrey Nelson.
Yep, Audrey, go ahead.
Thank you. Okay, on this. I think what's hard for me right now is we spent a lot of time looking at the road, and I served on the Robbins Island Task Force, and I honestly can't remember where we talked about shelters. And I guess the question I would have is which ones should be the priorities, and are they the right size, and are we looking for donations for them and those types of things. So I apologize for asking for more information on the shelters, but I do think we have this group, and the information that at least I've received has really been on the road, not on the shelters. And so that's my questions with that.
I think those are good questions on the shelters, and I would say that we should for sure make sure we get as much information on the shelters that we can, and I think those are tough for me personally, just because, you know, we don't even know if they're going to get funded because there's so much up in the air right now. I guess my only concern would be is if anybody has anything really big or major concerns that we're not comfortable with here, then that's that. But if the shelters, because I think those could get funded through private donations if we are short, I'm assuming we would want to try to go fund those and whatnot. The majority of the money here, is my understanding, has got to be in moving the dirt and the roads. But those are my thoughts. Anybody else have any comments?
This is Dennis.
Yep, Dennis, go ahead.
And this is more a question maybe for staff, but it has to do with funding. And are we getting the cart before the horse here? I mean, when we look at the receipts for the sales tax coming in, I don't know when we can pay for this, or if we're looking at bonding. I just want to make sure that we're not getting ahead of ourselves.
Sean Meskey.
Sean, go ahead.
First, I want to reiterate the comments the mayor made about the Robbins Island Committee. I think they've done a great job. This is not my area of expertise, and I'm going to rely on those folks that put this plan together. As a council member, my attention turns to exactly the point Dennis is making about the money. That's a lot of unknowns, and the decision will have to be made there. As far as the shelters are concerned, I want to kind of piggyback on what Matt was talking about just now. My only question would be, because I'm not going to get into the minutia of building a shelter, but when these come in, and I've seen enough of these projects to know when we have enough money to build a shelter, what will be the process to perhaps have to modify those plans? So for instance, if it comes in and we have $350,000 in excess, would we improve a plan on one of those shelters? So I don't want to know all of the details of the shelters here. I don't think I need to. But when it comes time for that, what will be our process? What will be the structure that we will be using to make those modifications? Will that come back here? Will it go back to the Robbins Island Committee and then come back here and then move through all the process again? So I just have a question about how we envision that process unfolding, because I'm fine with the plan now, but there, as you say, there's a lot of unknowns, in particular how it's funded. And when those funding dollars come in, what's the plan at that point?
This is Matt. I think that's a really good question that probably I don't know if there's an answer for. I'm assuming the subcommittee would go back with their people and bring back the specifications of the shelters, the sizes and things like that based on funding. Maybe they get supplemented. The other thing I think that my understanding is, and again, this is new territory for all of us, but I believe that if we approved a design, a master plan design like this one, and it goes to the next step, at the end of the day, I think the council and the staff financing department is going to determine, when we can fund it and move forward. I mean, I don't think approving anything means we're going to start digging ground in May, obviously, or maybe not even in 2020. I don't know that. I think that's got to come from a different, probably council, public works, or public, whatever committee would look at that with financing. So I think that we're just really focused on the design, like the master plan. And those are my comments on that.
Well, I'll just chime in as our goal was when we were getting this all ready to go was per kind of the direction of the Executive Lost in Willmar Committee and the mayor, that for us to get this ready to go, if we could before this pandemic, to have construction tentatively set for August 15th through November 15th of this year. Now, this is going to be a working document in my eyes. What we're doing right now is trying to approve of this overall design. I think Jared would have to let us know if we can tweak when it comes to the bids that come in on the shelters and how much money will be left if we only want enough money to do one, and then tweak it from there if we're able to, as far as the size and dimensions and things like that. And if people aren't out shopping and we're not getting that money and that revenue coming in to be ready to pay for this cash come August 15th, I understand that, and I think the community understands that, and we just have to plan, well, maybe we can have rebid it or if we can still hold those bid numbers and have it ready to go in maybe May, once the road restrictions are lifted and construction can happen inside the city facilities. So That's our tentative goal, or that's been always our goal. It was August 15th through November 15th to work on this or have the project construction be done. But I think we understand that times are changing and we don't know what's going to happen tomorrow.
Matt, this is Brian.
Yep, Brian.
Just following up on the line of questioning of the getting the bids in, and let's say we do one shelter and we've got $100,000 left over. If we want to change anything at that point in time, it would be a change order, to the original contract, unless you were to put in alternates like to shelter number 1 or shelter number 2. If in the process you said the alternate shelter number 1 has 3 sections that we may do, you'd build that into your plans and specs. So if you came up with some extra money, you could do it. If you came up short, you wouldn't do one, but you could make another one bigger. That gets really complex. And if we had all the money, or the bids came in 100,000 less, but we can't do shelter number 2. Other than maybe doing a couple of change orders on a smaller end, I'm not sure that we would say we're going for a 30 by 50 building instead of a 20 by 40. That throws that shelter way out of whack as far as the plans and specs are concerned. So that's not a change order. If you said I want to add 2 more feet, to the overhang, that might be a change order. But changing the size, that would not work out too well, I don't think, in the big scheme of things. So you would want to go in with the plans and specs. I know that puts a lot of work on Jared and probably the subcommittee, but once the plans and specs are done, that's what you go with.
Brian, also, isn't that where Marcus comes into play too, as far as handling some of that? Is that part of their role?
Oh, I'm sure, but their role, I think, to start with, is to make sure that what we're bidding can be built for that price. And so, what we've been hearing all along is that the construction manager said, we have a few projects where we do go over, but 95% of the time we're spot on. That's their role to do that beforehand. It still doesn't mean you go over budget on the bids, but then they can work to figure out how do we reduce that cost. So yeah, you're right. Short answer, I'm rambling, is that the construction manager and the architect or engineering firm are to work together. But this particular project doesn't have a construction manager. It just has as the engineer to do the work. So we're relying upon them to make sure the numbers are right.
And for us to be at this point as a chair right now and to hear if someone wants the shelter changed when we're at this final point is a little bit, I'll just be honest, upsetting to me, because Fernando is our rep. And then if any questions he's supposed to, or someone present them to and keep the executive loss in local option sales committee up to date on what we're planning, because if we've come to this point and we're going to change it all again, I feel like you're it's not so much a slap in the face, but it is to say that no, we don't like it, we're micromanaging it, I want to change it all and be this way. So you got to look at it from if there was any type of input from what we were doing, it should have been shared with us from several months ago. But that's just how I feel right now. If someone is saying that they don't like the sizing of our shelters right now and they should be this, or they want the design to be that, and they shouldn't be in here at all, or whatnot, I wish that information would have been shared with us a long time ago.
Okay, this is Matt, and I think people are just trying to go ahead, Marv.
Rachel, to your comments and questions here, I think what we're trying to do is, this is the first project that has been presented to this group, And we want to make sure we get the first one right. And the questioning that we're having is not necessarily about the work that you performed or the work that Jared performed. I think you've heard numerous times from numerous people that were appreciative of the work you have done. I think what we're wanting to do is just make sure that we have the pieces in place. And with the funding numbers, and you know, as the mayor, I saw those funding numbers for the first time today. I had not seen any of those numbers prior to today. And you know, so I think there are some concerns just because of the money. So I think, again, I'll just reiterate that you've done a great job, and we're just wanting to make sure we're doing the process right. And you know, I fully support the concept, understanding that things might change as far as timelines depending upon the money. And so, I mean, I would be in favor of it. I'm not a voting member, but I'll speak in favor.
And if I could, this is Sean, my comments were nothing about modifying any shelter at all. Matter of fact, I again will say I don't know anything about it. However, it's absolutely critical that we understand what the process is. And that's where my questions are, is what will that process be? As we've already stated, we are following the process that we have agreed to when we started this. I'm just seeing when there is some changes that come in, what will that process be? And so I appreciate the administrator explaining what that process will be. So I'm confident moving this as well.
And my comment is not really at any thing that Marv has said or that yourself, Sean, has said either. Those are all valid. If the money's not there or if anything else, I totally get that. But I feel like right now, some of the questions that we're asking to moving forward, besides this being a base bid and alternate bid and another alternate bid, besides if the money's not there, it's not there. I feel like we're asking the questions right now of how is this exact shelter going to look? Because if you're saying it's 20 by 40 right now, I don't like that. That to me is getting into extreme details right now, but I understand what Brian is getting at, that we can't, if it's a small change order, that's able to tweak along the way, but without rebidding. But if we were going to do something different, I would just wish that any concerns for that type of design would have been brought to our attention.
Can Mary Swatsky speak up for a minute?
It's probably going more towards Audrey's comments.
Oh, this is Mary Swatsky. I'm just, some of the questions going forward, I think, you know, I don't know what 20 by 40 looks like. So that's why I asked, like, how many tables can you get in there? Because it doesn't, 20 by 40 doesn't mean a darn thing to me. So, you know, the next level, when you get to Park and Rec Board, you know, it's just, those are kind of the below the bar questions that I don't care what direction it's, you know, sitting or anything, but that's good to know that it's up, you have water up there. I mean, you have a line up there. I didn't know that. And so it's a perfect location. But those are, by being on the front line, first to be in front of I've said it before, but in front of the firing squad, those are some of the details that maybe you might, and I'm going to remember this on my Swanson project, but give the reasons why we're doing what we're doing. And so I think just the questions are helping you be prepared, and you are well prepared. Don't take that as a slam, but being, you know, prepared for, you know, other questions down the road. And just so you kind of have that, you know, you've thought through the problems, and that's great. But now we're just asking why.
So Matt,
If
this is Bob.
I would ask Rob and Kurt then to chime in on, you know, to answer maybe any of Audrey's questions, why the shelters are how they are, or the design of what they came to, or Jared.
Can I just ask a question before you go there?
Yep, go ahead, Audrey.
And I'm sorry, Rachel, if
This is Dennis.
Is it all right?
I'm ready to make a motion. This is Dennis.
Can I speak though first, Dennis? So this is Audrey, and I apologize, but what I will defend is that the only thing that has been brought before our group has been the roads. And so the shelters being added on right now were a surprise. And I'm not passing judgment on the two that are there. It was more a question of the priorities and how those two were chosen, because that information has not been shared with this group. And so I appreciate the information that's there, but the only thing that was shared with the local option sales tax group was the road prior to this. And so I'm sorry if I offended you in asking the questions.
I'll just say no.
This is Dennis. Can I make a motion?
Okay, Dennis, speak, please.
I would move approval as presented, subject to being able to pay for the project in cash.
Okay, Dennis made a motion approving the plan subject to paying in cash. Is there a second?
I will second, but I have questions.
Okay, Mary seconded the motion. Discussion. Mary.
I'm glad you repeated that because Dennis is going in and out. And so I believe we are the motion is to accept this plan upon cash payment.
That's my understanding, correct?
Is that realistic? Can we do that?
This is Brian, Matt.
Yeah, go ahead, Brian.
It'd be unrealistic.
I think we should keep financing and how we're going to pay bonding, financing. I think we should leave that to the city administrator, city council, and the financing department. I'm not comfortable with that. So I would not be in favor of, I'd be in favor of the first part, but I don't want to get into the financing. There's economics involved here. I'm not comfortable with that part. I'm comfortable moving the plan forward, but I would like to keep the financing out of it. And this is Matt, my opinion on that motion.
Dennis, this is Tony. Will you accept an amendment to accept or make a motion to accept the design of Robbins Island and then to move this forward to Park and Rec? And I agree with Matt that we should let the city and the council determine financing and if financing is available. Thank you.
This is Dennis. I'm having read Brian's message about financing and bonding and all of that. I won't accept an amendment. I think we should just vote and go ahead.
Any further discussion on the motion? So we better go do a roll call here and you better say your name and vote. And Sean and Audrey, I think you guys are voting members, I believe. So Matt, I'm going to say no.
Sorry, Matt. John Conold. I had to leave for a few minutes. Could you say the motion one more time so that I know what I'm voting for, please?
So the motion is to approve the design and also, but only with financing it with cash. And people spoke to that, John. So I don't know if you, I don't know where you're at as far as you're up to date, but
yeah, I don't know the information, so I probably would have to abstain, I'm guessing.
Okay.
This is Tony. No.
Bob Poe, no.
Dennis, yes.
Audrey Nelson, yeah.
Matt,
Mary, are you there?
vote.
Sean
Sorry.
Mary, have you?
I thought, yeah, I did to myself. I'm sorry, I was on mute. Mary Sawatsky, no.
Sean Meskey, no.
Okay, that's 6 votes and yes and 2 no. So that motion does not pass. Does anybody else want to make a motion? Otherwise, let's on this topic.
This is Tony. I would like to make a motion that we approve the design of Robbins Island and leave financing up to the council and the city.
Do we have a second?
This is Bob, I'll second.
So we have a motion to approve the design and leave the financing up to the city and the city council and staffing financing. Bob seconded it. Discussion.
Mary Sawatsky.
This is Matt.
Has a question.
Go ahead, Mary.
If you want to speak to it first, go ahead.
I just will say what I said earlier. I'm not comfortable with our committee getting involved with economics and what the best way to finance, because I think that's going to be a moving, and I don't even know if the council and the city administrator would want us handling that. I think we need to leave that to the experts that are going to follow the economics, and they're going to follow what's the best. Do we bond? Do we not bond? I don't want to be tied into financing. I don't think that's our role. So I'm a yes. I will be voting yes on this. I'd really like to see this move forward. I appreciate all the work the committee's done, and I think that there's no big red flags to not move this forward that I'm seeing.
Okay, so then
Mary?
I have my comment, and I want to be respectfully give due time to our present city council member and to a former city council member as yes votes. I want to understand how it can be done with cash if you know that there's a way to pay for it with cash versus allowing it to go forward through the channels that we'll have to do with this motion. So if it just please give me some background information, Dennis and or Audrey.
This is Dennis. Hello?
You're there, Dennis. Go ahead.
Okay. I'm just going primarily a little bit that I know and what Brian is saying in his memo about financing, that the sale of bonds is going to be very difficult. The environment is difficult right now. You may not be able to sell bonds. So if we want to move this ahead, we're going to have to move it ahead, I think, with the cash that comes in. Well, that's my thinking.
This is Sean. Can I speak? I'm a council member as well.
Sean, go ahead.
I absolutely agree with what Dennis just said. I will tell you, as a council member, I'm not going to let those plans go through perhaps how we want if the money is not there and we have no other alternatives. I do agree, Matt, with what you're saying. I think it's the responsibility of the city and the council to do that. We'll roll up our sleeves and try to find the funding, but if we don't find it, then it won't happen until we can. I agree with what is said. I think you let the the level that is supposed to make that decision, I'll let you into a little inclination of how I'm believing it. I'm going to want to see the money to make it happen. So I'm not going to forecast any more than that, but that is the responsibility, I believe, of the council.
Thank you, Sean. Any other comment?
John Conold. I agree. I think our role, like with what Matt and Sean are saying, I think our role is to approve the design and everything looks in order. From what I've seen and heard tonight, I think the city council needs to worry about whether they're going to pay cash or with the finances and things. I don't think that's our role. So that's my opinion on it. And I think we can move this forward. They've done a lot of hard work, and I think they have their everything in line. That's it.
Matt, this is Brian.
Brian, go ahead.
Yeah, I think the whole the way I see this going is probably correct in that the committee is making recommendations to proceed, and it's up to the city council to finally, make the decision. And they're going to make that based upon whether or not we can get financing or whether we can't. If we were to do all our projects with cash, none of these projects would probably get done in the next 14 years. I mean, the cost of the construction would go up. It's just not viable. We don't collect enough money on an annual basis to pay cash for all the projects. So we're going to have to use debt service and sell bonds. So generally speaking, we'll go through the process. We'll talk with our financial advisors, our bond attorneys, and see if there's funding for these projects out there. And we may find out that there is funding, but the interest rate is too high for us, or maybe, there is no funding, but we'll make that decision after we've gotten to the process of can we finance it. But I think the role, as you stated, for the committee is to say, the subcommittees, you've done your job, you've got a project, let's move this forward for final decision and discussion by the city council.
Thank you, Brian. And I agree. At the end of the day, the council is going to decide when these are going to go based on how they're comfortable with where we're at. So unless anybody has, and that could be a while, just because of what we're dealing with. So unless anybody has any more questions, I'd be ready to take a vote. So again, to move the plan forward, the motion was from Tony, Bob seconded. I will get the ball rolling. Matt, yes.
Bob, yes.
Tony, yes.
Mary, yes.
Sean, yes.
John, yes.
Audrey, yes.
I have had a hard time picking up Dennis this whole time. Nonetheless, I've got 8 yeses. So that motion passes. And item number 4 on the agenda. I'm up against the clock here. I got to be honest with you, as far as time right now. So I will give you a 30-second overview. I'm going to be on the phone in the park or the rec and event center committee is a 5:30 call just like this. So I need to wrap this meeting up in 5 minutes unless somebody wants to continue it. But we're trying to do the same thing. We're working through design. It's going really well. Good feedback, good collaboration, a lot of back and forth. So go ahead,
Matt,
Audrey.
this is Audrey, and I think that the document, that's the last document, should have been reviewed first. And I would encourage us to take the time to have Brian walk through that document I feel that it's very important that everyone on this call actually has a chance to review that.
What document, Audrey? What?
Brian's document, the last document the document that was after the drawings.
Okay. I'm looking forward here. I've got. Do you want like Brian to do a summary, Audrey? Are you looking for like Brian to recap it?
Yes, I think it would be important for him to walk through that document.
Okay.
And Matt, if you need to go, I can, as vice chair, finish up with the meeting. So if you need to buzz off, go ahead.
So why don't I, I've got a couple minutes and I'll probably drop off. Mary, if you want to close the meeting, if people want to stay for the recap with Audrey and Brian, and I will update myself on that as well. I'm assuming there's no major action to be taken on that topic.
No, there's not. It really was for informational purposes only, so that you, as a committee overseeing the local option sales tax projects, understand the financial considerations that the city council is going to have to go through in order to fund these projects, as well as our normal street projects and any other bonding that we have going on. So it requires no action, but it was just an attempt on my part to make sure everybody is aware of the climate we find ourselves in, and potentially the really hard decisions the city council is going to have to make on not just these projects, but also normal street projects, and that will all be driven by being able to obtain financing. So I don't know that I need to go line by line and go through this. You just need to be aware of it so that it's on your radar. So when something pops up, a month from now from the city council, you don't go, hey, this is the first time I heard that there could be economic issues here. I'm putting it out there up front so everybody's aware. And that's all it was meant to do.
Brian,
this is
Swatsky. Are we at liberty to forward this to like the Swanson committee so that I've given them a little bit of a rundown and a warning, but I think it's by being on the committee, can they see this information as well?
Sure, there's no problem with showing this, and letting people, know that, the council has decisions it has to make based upon the current situation we find ourselves in. We have businesses that are not operating because of the COVID-19. We've got, people that may not be working. You got property taxes that may get delayed in getting paid and received. And so it puts the city in a whole financial dishevelment, and the local option sales tax are a piece of that. And when you look at our overall total bonding for our projects in the next 2 years, we're talking about, almost $39 million just for construction projects. And then on top of that, we've got another $3.5 to $4 million on our normal street projects. So this is an abnormal high number for debt that we're going out into the marketplace with. And yet our financial advisors have told us, one city went out with, I can't remember what number it was, $60 million worth of debt, and it got sold. Well, the next city came out with $10 million worth of debt, and there were no buyers. So the market is unstable, and I just want everybody to understand that these decisions are going to have to be made, and some of these projects may get to a certain point, and the city council will say that's as far as we can go because we don't have any money to go further with this. And that gets back to Dennis's question, I think earlier, was, do we do it with cash? I don't know that we can do them with cash, but we can't pay debt off if we don't have the money either. So that's all this is good for. And so if there are any other questions, by all means, I'm here to answer.
So as a follow-up to this, I mean, the next time you meet, do you think as a city council, is that when you will make, you'll discuss it and would you make a decision, or discuss it and then it could go into May to make a decision on like 1 A, B, C?
Finance committee will be meeting first, where we'll talk about the situation we currently find ourselves in. And then, as you notice, not all of the projects are ready at the same time. And so as each project, reaches a certain point, the engineers and the architects will need some guidance. Maybe one project, gets to the complete plans and spec stage, and we say, okay, we're putting it on the shelf until we know what the economy is like. Others may be just temporarily put on hold. Those are decisions for the council to make, but finance will see them first and put recommendations before the full city council. So this could be a discussion that happens, in the next 2 weeks, or as things happen, we may put them on on hold at certain spots in the design process or in the the bidding process, before the bidding process. So it's a work in progress. So just, understand this is fluid and that it's going to go through its steps, and there may be some immediate decisions and there may be some ones that might take a month or 2 months.
Makes sense. Thank you. Is there any other groups that would like to share your committee, if anybody else is still on?
I can give a brief summary of the Rec Fields Committee. This is John Conold. We met today, our subcommittee met today with the architects and Marcus Construction, and they put a design together for us and showed us the design and kind of went through what it all, kind of the details of it, what it all includes. And then they got into, and then Marcus got into some costing, preliminary numbers of costing. They were, I don't know, Tony maybe could also chime in on this, that they, were very, they didn't go on the cheap side, so they were conservative that way, making sure that they kind of gave us the full scope of what it is. And now we're kind of in the phase where they're going to have to help us with our budget to narrow things down. And we as a subcommittee are going to have to figure out our wants and our needs and kind of trim things down. As you guys know, that when you go into, you kind of put as much into it as you want, and then knowing that you're probably going to have to kind of prioritize your things that you need to have your rec fields and your bubble and your softball fields. So it was a good meeting. We're continuing to move forward at that until kind of Rob gives us the direction. Okay, this is where we need to stop now due to the situation that we're in. So that's all the information I have. So if you have any questions, you certainly can ask.
I can give an update on Swanson Field if there aren't any questions for the John Conold. I'll go ahead. This is Mary with the Swanson Field Regional Park. We have a budget of $2 million. We have met a couple of times on Zoom, and tomorrow night I think we have a midpoint meeting. We have found that when we got to looking at what the architect had put out there, we weren't on the same page for a few things. And so we decided that with the upgrades from the last meeting, we would have a midpoint before too much work was done for that kind of the next full committee meeting. And I think that's been helpful because it's amazing. We're doing the best that we can given the situation. And I love this, being able to have team meetings virtually, but there is some interpretation to, everybody is up for their own interpretation of what we've discussed. So with that, a couple weeks ago, they came up with a plan of Plan A, which was about 1.7, and a Plan B would be 1.5 project. And so now we are looking at maybe seeing, what's an a la carte type thing. For instance, what must we have, so to speak, and then what could we have in a next phase or in the future, or another planning, fundraiser type thing, that if we needed to add something that is on our to-do list. So it's been good. We've had a lot of good input from our committee members. So with that, I think I'll just leave it at that. Are there any questions for Swanson? Can anybody talk, or is somebody in command and can't unmute you?
No,
We don't hear you. I think we're just accepting the reports as they're being presented.
Oh.
They're very good reports. Yep.
Okay, I thought you were all on mute and nobody was letting you talk.
Nope, we're good, Mary.
Okay, wow, it really sounds like a lot of people, one group's meeting tonight, we're meeting tomorrow. You met today, John. That's fantastic. It's exciting. Marv, do you have any, or Audrey? I don't know if Audrey's still on, but is there any further work on community center at all?
I can give a quick update on that. The committee hasn't met since the last time you guys have met. There is conversation happening as to if we should continue moving forward with the City Hall project or not, based on the information that Brian has talked about. And the community center is part of that, of course. And so I think those discussions are to be held by the council and also the committee that's working on that. But that committee has not met since the last time they gave an update to you guys. Nothing new.
Great. Well, thanks, Marv. And to the city council, you guys, maybe just a shout out from the Invest in Willmar board. These are to the city people. This is strange times, and we get that. Actually, I'll speak for myself. I understand this is a leisure time activity that, we're representing with Swanson Field, and I realize this isn't a life or death situation. And given all that, I certainly want to work within the, be responsible with the taxpayers' money. And obviously the city has a lot of decisions to make, let alone your day-to-day work. So thank you. I see the city trucks out and about and waving to them as I'm on my daily walks. And so I appreciate the work that you guys are doing.
You could have spoke for me too, Mary. Kudos.
All right. Well, with that, this was a good first start. The guinea pigs were the guinea pigs of the Robbins Island, and then on top of it, with this format. So I think we did a really good job as far as learning and how we'll tweak some things, I'm sure, as we go forward. And so if any of you have suggestions. I'm not going to take any offense to let's do this or don't do that. We just need to work together. So if there are ideas and suggestions, please email them in maybe, or, email or text so that we have them on paper, but then we can follow up if we have questions. But certainly, Brian, you guys have all done a lot of meetings before. So if this was very discombobulated, help us get back on track. And with that, if there is no other business, can I ask for a motion to adjourn?
So moved, Mary.
All those in favor?
Aye.
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 All right. Thank you all. Thanks, Jared.
Thank you.
And Rachel, I bet she's off already, but thank you very much. This was great, and you have done great work.
All right. Thanks. Have a great night.
Yep, you too. Bye-bye.